Hey, good day, everyone. Corrie here coming in to do the weekly channeled message. This is for that very last week now into August. We are in August the 30th, moving into September. This is being recorded right after the new moon, and we have really truly shifted into that Virgo energy. You can feel it. You may not feel it, but I can feel it. And I can feel that change. I can feel that shift. I can feel there is a change in seasons that we're being prepared for. Even though, when I step outside early in the morning, it's got the fall in the air, but fall is not here. So what it's really teaching us is that we are preparing. So sometimes we may have experiences, or we may be experiencing the beginning of a shift or a change, or feeling a change in energy. It doesn't mean that we got to jump all the way in. It doesn't mean you go out and start buying all your pumpkin lattes and putting your scarf on because now winter's here, because it's not, because we haven't even left season. So it's not about skipping and jumping over and leaving where we are. It's about embracing where we are right now and preparing that we can be where we are and still prepare. So there is this gentleness that comes in. So it's like the that rush is kind of ending. Like I don't see the same rush before, but now I see conviction. And now I see this sense of conviction into what is not goals, but priorities. What is important to us? What matters the most to us? And so in this season of, of harvest, of preparing for harvest, is how do we maximize the sun that we have now and the heat to benefit, to kind of amplify what is left until it's time to fully harvest or beginning to harvest. So it's like what it is that's in our future or in ourselves that we know that we have to make a priority to really reflect upon our own actions, our own behaviors, our own sense of being, our own sense of worth. How much have we, because this is where and I'm going to talk about this today, and I'm going to talk about this in a way that is as non-judgmental as what the guardians are telling me. But what they're telling me is there's this sense that we have been so, sorry, my mic was all the way down. That we have been so kind of infested. Like we've had this infestation of there's nothing any more important to you than you. God only exists within you. There's nothing outside of you. There's no one coming to save you. There's no one but you. You have to be independent. You have to think about you. You have to do this. You have to do that. And then you can only look in the way of what aligns. Put that boundary up so strong and so thick and protect you. And even if you make alliances with people, make sure that those alliances are first thinking about what you're going to get out of that, what you are receiving from that, what it's doing for you. And that's such an intention that is unintentional in so many ways, but has been so conditioned and programmed. And what I have been given in vision and being able to see is a softer side. And through that softness, what was given to me was my grandmother used to crochet doilies and tablecloths, and they were intricate. And I used to always say to her, they're worth so much money, because I just watched the hours she put in. And she said, it's yes, it may be, but the value in what it gave her in the process of doing that is what was most valuable. Her meditation, her quiet time, her peace, her adjusting, her adapting, her, adapting to changes, to seasons, to losses, through grief. But it was occupying this space. It was occupying where emotions could ride over her sense of faith in knowing that there's always going to be another season, or that there was more love than there was this hurt or this pain, that there was still more love. And she was always weaving into that sense of love and creating. And so that creative archetypal energy is asking us to really look at what kind of world have we been creating? What kind of world have we been weaving at the threads into in our mind by living so empowered by thought and less empowered by heart? And even though we think it's heart, because we think heart instead of dropping thought and live by heart. And there's a huge difference. So finding that voice, finding that softness, finding that essence is really truly the reflection of how am I contributing? What am I contributing to that thought process? So even in that sense of alignment and alliances is what really was the intention to my actions. What was I seeking? What was it filling? What was it filling for me? Because we hate the space between changes, or we also have no idea how unkind we are to the version of ourselves that we have already placed judgment upon that may not be as sparkly and shiny as that of another. And so because we have already rejected the essence of our truest version of ourselves, we are always in that sense of rejection of everything that has such a possibility to glue and network us together as a we. And finding that space within us and within our hearts. When we look deep, when we're in this space. And so when I opened the door this morning, my first thought was, I don't even have to water the flowers because fall is coming. But fall is not coming till there's a set date on the calendar that says when fall is coming, because, you know, we live by that time. But fall is not really coming until all has fallen. And when all has fallen, and we have gathered up and we start the cleanup and we start preparing for the winter, that is the fall. In the meantime, it may be a little chillier in the mornings at 17, 18 degrees Celsius, but by afternoon, it's going to be 27, 28. So my mindset will change from sweater to shorts, or sweater and bikini top, and sitting outside and writing, right? But that mindset, and so that's how powerful the mind is. So changing the projection of our mindsets is what is one of the most important things that we can do in this time right now as we prepare. So in the meantime, I have been impatiently picking some of the apples and things like that. And my partner says, why are you in a rush to pick the apples? And I'm like, because it's time to pick the apples. He says, leave the apples until the apples are ready. I said, but the apples are falling. He said, no, the birds are knocking the apples. The wind is knocking the apples. The tree has not told you to take the apples. You know, you trust the guardians. And so the guardians is that of the tree. What grows on the tree is that, like the saints, right? It's that knows to hold on to faith, and that the self is very fragile and has a weakness, and it has temptations, and it has impatience, and it has, so we have all of those things. So if we look at ourselves as that of having the need to explore our own impatience, explore our own whys to why we push narratives, or why we create thoughts to create an enemy, because the thoughts that we think of what somebody else is doing or what somebody else is thinking has nothing to do with the person that you have added to the narrative of the story. Those thoughts are yours and they belong to you. And sometimes it's so hard to see our own monster. It is sometimes hard to see our own, improper responses, our own bad behavior, our own unintentional intentions that have a motive to conquer that true self that we don't believe is enough. Or there's that sense of never being satisfied, the gluttony, the imperfect, the imperfections that we just can't accept, or that you may not become the celebrity of the world, or that you may not be the rock star, but you can be the rock star in your own little world by accepting that self. So there's this powerful sense of of stop, slow down. And so some of my apples need the first frost, apparently. And we haven't had the first frost. And when the first frost comes, they actually become sweeter. And so sometimes we have to let ourselves be patient and let those moments come. But in that patience, it's really a time of reflection. I have been speaking about the mirror has turned around. That mirror turned around means that what you may be feeling or sensing is not what anyone else or the world is doing to you, is what you allow. And so this Archangel Mariel is keeps coming to Mariel, I think is how she tells me, Mariel. And she comes in with this sense of relationships, and she comes in with this sense of knowing, but Pedro is also coming from the saints. And as this beautiful saint appears to me, I see the fragility. I see the sense of stigma. And so we play, these stigmas that appear. And so these stigmas and just knowing. And so Pedro in the saints really truly was bleeding out this sense of just so devoted and connected in such a way to Jesus, to God, to creator, to source. So bring that inward. What is that conviction that you hold on to? What is that rush? What is that sense of, why do I keep returning to that story, to that narrative? Why do I play the same roles in every one of my stories, but I always have a new face that plays the role of that sense of the villain in my movies? But it's never the same person. It's always somebody different, but there's always a villain. And why am I always either the victim or the savior or, the hero of my own story? Because we've been so fed that alone story, and you got to do it alone, and there is no one else. But there's something so much greater than us. So when you speak of there's no one coming to save you, and this was one of my own bullshit stories, speak of no one coming to save you, there's always been somebody saving me from myself, never really going against my free will to let myself still have these porous sense of awareness around where I would, want to see in somebody else and inspire somebody else to rise and to shine. Because I've truly believed that person was more worthy than me. And that's the truth, because I didn't like the strong, powerful woman who has a voice that often stands up. And I'm like, no, she's a troublemaker. She's a problem. I don't want to be her. I want to be the nice girl. I want to be that good girl. Because if I'm that nice girl, I'm that good girl by definition. So I was always rushing to step past and move beyond the essence of that power and that light, and to give myself time to come into season, to know the truth of, I am kind, I am gentle, I am fragile, I am strong, but I had to restore that integrity, as do you. And so these are the seasons that just saying, and this didn't come overnight, just saying, it's not about you rushing this, it's about knowing that you have season on top of season. What you do with the seasons, in the seasons, preparing for the seasons, before the seasons, and what is priority. What is important to you right now? For me, it is, taking what is ready and growing those things. It is moving forward with what is prepared, what is ready, what is in season, but not going all the way to winter when I'm still in summer, not stepping to the end of fall and creating pumpkin pies or putting out Halloween decorations when it's not Halloween, right? It's where we are. So where you are right now is your invocation. Some of your biggest truths sit right here, right now. Some of your biggest truths. And you'll never be at peace as long as peace is that motive. If you are seeking to be at peace, if you are trying to find peace, you'll always be at war. You'll always be at war with, if you're trying to perfect your world will always be imperfect. If you're trying to be something in your world, you'll never be anything, because it'll never meet up to the standards and the expectations that you have placed, because you will find a victim to your Venus flytrap. And when you find the victim to that Venus flytrap and you entrap that and you enslave that story, then that's how that suffering will become even bigger and more. And so moving beyond that sense of, I'm not seeking peace. I'm seeking what's on the other side of making peace with the fact that I'm just me. And there's such a simplicity to it. This is my life right now. This is where I am right now. Does it mean it's where I have to stay? No. What is the priority for me to get there? It's for me to first discover the me that I have been rejecting, the me that I have been denying access into this world, because the biggest boundaries that you actually place is against some of the most beautiful pieces of yourself. And you'll usually block out the people that may even question that within you. When we question authority, when we question the control, when we question, the behaviors, when we question and it gets shut down, those are also mirror reflections. And those mirror reflections are saying, you're so defensive of that reflection that's coming back to you, because you've built a boundary and a wall around it, because you don't want to see your own monster. You don't want to see your own behaviors. You don't want to see your own actions. So where have I been for the past few years? In those mirrors, standing in those mirrors with the courage to have constructive, loving criticism without judgment, to the why, to the whys and the actions that I would take, that would have me not always seeing my own truth, but also to having myself in that relationship with pain and in relationship with those in pain. And not that I was not going to be in relationship with people who have pain, but when you end the relationship with pain, you start a relationship with healing. And when you start a relationship with healing, there's a surrender that takes place. And when you allow space for that surrender, you recognize that you've told yourself a lot of stories and you've listened to a lot of conditioning so that you could be pulled all the way over here. It's like that one friend that pulls you away from everything and everybody else. And when you're a kid in school, because they have so many insecurities and so many fears and they want to be loved. And so they drag you away from everything else. Well, that little person exists in you. And that little person that exists in you that does that to you, that little person is trying to protect you from the world they think is going to cause you such harm. But maybe that world is not. Maybe that essence, so that pulling you away is pulling you away from all of these aspects of you, all of these pieces of you that are yours to extract those nuggets, to learn the more about you. So this season, this change, this retrograde, this time that we're in is like, it's not the fact of is waking up, it's the fact of is rubbing your eyes and taking off the blinders. It's like when you wake up in the morning, you got that fuzzy eyes, right? You're like, oh, and you stumble around, you fall around, you feel like you slept in, you overslept. So you start to panic, you start to rush around, well, that's how we have been existing in this world for a long time now, out of that fear, instead of sitting up in the bed, looking around, saying, oh, well, if I overslept a few minutes, right? Instead of looking around, taking a breath, connecting in and say, yeah, I'm here. And how can I be of service to myself today to make space to be available to all of the beautiful things in life, or to be available to people in life, to be able to be of service? But how do I do this? How do I get to this? How do I know who this is? And so when the reflection is, who's effing up your day and who's causing you your pain and who's holding you back in life and who's keeping the world from you, it's like, Well, what world are you trying to claim? What world are you trying to claim? What identity are you trying to claim? What energy, what emotion are you trying to claim? What are you trying to lay down the stakes into and put the flags in and put the boundaries up and put the fence around and call it that empire? What are you trying to own? What are you trying to take over? What are you trying to? And so those is just like, what are you trying to do? So when you stop that friend that pulls, you know, that little friend inside of yourself that pulls you away from you, pulls you away from getting to know you, and you say, well, what are you really afraid of? What are you really afraid of? What is so difficult about you? What is so bad or so wrong about you that you have to become everything and everyone else? And these are big, big questions. And trust me, it's been years. So you have aha moments. But when you have an aha moment, it doesn't mean that you have corrected course. It means that you have started a process, a healing journey, the beginning to get to the end of keep repeating a never-ending story, to stop having those claim to fame identities, those needs, and just say, this is what I do. This is who I am. This is who I am in this moment. Why am I this person? Why do I do this? And there's just so much truth in that, because the reflection that's coming back is the traitor. And the biggest traitor that we have is ourselves. That demon energy or that darkness energy. Now, darkness is not always bad. That kind of devil on our shoulder, we have that in us. We have the good, bad, and the ugly, but we always only want to see the good. And when we spend our lives being afraid of seeing some of those aspects of ourselves, we'll always be afraid to see it in somebody else. And so then we find a way around getting to that sense of self-punishment. So there is so much of softness. And when I think back to my grandmother rocking in her chair, and I'd come in late at 1 or 2 in the morning, and my mother would have, if she was there, she would have been like, where the hell were you? Why weren't you in? And my grandmother would not feed the rebel. She would not feed the rebel. She would speak to the soft, gentle girl that she knew I was. She would nurture my needs. She'd say, hi, you made it home. I'm like, yeah, you're home safe. Yeah. Good. Glad you're home. Want a cup of tea? Want to have some toast before bed? We're Newfoundlanders, so we drink tea at night. And I'm like, okay. And she'd make me a tea and she'd put some sweetness and sugar, and I'm sure there was magic in it. And she would make me a toast. And we would sit and she'd tell me about her younger years and she'd tell me about her life. She wasn't giving the attention to the rebel. She was always inspiring and encouraging and creating a sense of safety and stability and peace, so that I didn't have to put my dander up, my boundaries up, to be that sense of me, to be the rebel, to go into protection, to go into fight or flight. She was creating a space, and it was up to me to make peace with whatever I had done. And usually it meant if I did something that wasn't right, I probably was going to tell her so that I could set myself free. But I couldn't maintain that my whole life until now, when I allowed that grandmother energy inside of myself to rock me, to hold me, to hear those knitting needles, to hear her whistle as she crocheted, or if she was doing her crossword puzzles, as she was telling me she was keeping her brain active, but she was keeping her heart true and open and creating that space, and knowing that she had secret chambers. She had known pain like no other. She had lost a child. She knew what it was like to hold a child who wasn't here, but she also knew what it was like to have more children. She also knew what it was like to love again. She also knew what it was like to smile again. She also knew what it was like to feel that joy. and she made peace with where she was. And she found a contentment in choosing to know that her role in this world, her destiny, was to inspire us. And she is still the superstar. She is the rock star because I speak of her everywhere. We all speak of her everywhere. And our love for her is greater than anything. So sometimes you're looking at the picture in such a big way that you cannot see that when we come here, we are all volunteering. And we're all here to take our place and do our part. But what is our part in the play? And what part do we keep fighting for? And what do we keep want to be? Something to really contemplate this week, something to really bring into your heart, because this is where a time where the angels and the saints are coming to me all in one, and they're just coming as a joint system. And they're just saying, you have to really, truly look at the relationship, reflection of your own relationship, which is where I am just kind of coming through one part and now reflecting into, instead of looking into the angels and saints as that divine being that is only there when I'm in trouble, but knowing that divinity and webbed into that, we exist in that web as well. We exist in that energy. And so whoever and whatever you're meant to be, we don't even have to know the angels' names to know they're with us. No one needs to know who I am in order for me to be present and do beautiful things in this world. Neither do you. To be beautiful, to leave our imprint, is to be present in our nows as the truest versions of ourselves and not have to be that which is greater. And so knowing that our thoughts have the ability to do kindness and compassion, and that our thoughts are not the enemy. It's where we allow the ego to take us to the place to cause chaos and drama, to stir up an action that takes us into a narrative of a story, because who would we be without a story to tell? And so I found myself going back to an old deck of cards this morning, and it's the Guardian Angel Tarot, which is Doreen Virtue and Radley Valentine. And of course, Doreen has moved on into another path, another journey. But she was one of my first teachers. And that is to be honored in such a way of just knowing that power of being introduced into your own heart, and to not to reflect into being anything of who somebody else is, but to opening up, being given that key to discover that we have a divinity and a divine purpose and a divine way to live. And we have been so conditioned to be so far away from the divine. And as we soften our gaze, rub our eyes, as we soften our hearts, as we drop those big walls and boundaries of rejecting ourselves, rejecting those truest versions of ourselves, that we have to change who we are, we have to become something more, we have to hate on ourselves, that I hate who I was, I don't like who I was. No, we travel in to see the nuggets of the essence that maybe you were just always enough. Just maybe. So the card that came out was, your angels have noticed you are not moving forward. You have multiple options that you're reviewing, and you seem to be unable to choose. Ask your angels for a sign as to what direction to take, or just listen to your own inner voice. Deep down, you know what to do. And so all the things we are not doing, all the things that we have put on the back burner, is because we fear making the choice. We fear those choices. We fear ourselves. We've rejected ourselves. So the priority, and what is priority? What is important to us? And this is a time to not rush the season. Don't rush to all falling. Don't rush to having to can out what is harvesting, but sitting and watching the last stages of a season, embracing one shift to the next in a run of a day, because it will teach you about patience. It'll teach you and guide you about trusting that what is happening in one moment will not be happening in the next, or may not be happening in the next. And so if your thought has been following you through as a lifeline, what lifeline have you been attached to? What inner friend has been pulling you from the playground and telling you that this is what they think of you? This is what they said about you. This is who you are. This is what they, right? We create that little monster. We become that little monster. And that little monster needs love as well. But what narrative or story is controlling that behavior? And we all have it within us. Dive deep, look deep, and find that. And making you your priority to let yourself feel the essence of the shift, the change, and shifting from where do I need to go? What's next? I can't wait to look like the next season. I can't wait to be in the next season. But what can I embrace and discover by sitting in watching the effortlessness of how a season changes and how we change when we stop trying to force being in control and we allow ourselves to listen to what we have done to contribute to our own behaviors. Much love. Have a beautiful week. One card. That's what we were given. One card, two of thoughts. Beautiful white roses. She's turned away. She's probably mad, right? And he's trying to get her attention. This is God trying to get our attention. This is the guardians trying to get our attention. But when we're so busy writing out the story in our mind, mapping out the trail of escape, of judgment, of criticism, of all of those things, we can't see that there's kindness and generosity, and that not everyone's motives are the motives that we are telling ourselves that's your motive. So when you think everyone is out to get you or everyone is taking advantage of you, that's not the everyone. That's the you taking advantage of some of the, either the rebel, the victim, all of those things, or taking advantage of your own niceness. Much love. Have a beautiful day, and I will chat with you soon. Bye-bye.